And hello everyone, welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I'm your host Pete Bickford, I'm the creator of ComicBase, and welcome to a place where we get to chat about ComicBase and all things comic related for about an hour, give or take. This one might be shorter, might be a little longer, it depends on how deep into the weeds we go, because this is a get into the weeds kind of discussion. Just fair warning everyone, I do have just a little bit of ComicBase general news. If the subject of today doesn't particularly interest you, feel free to just tune out after a little while. Won't take offense on it. But what we wanted to talk about today in particular was this idea we had for addressing some of the thornier cross-reference issue titling schemes, which we'll get into in a bit. It's if there are any library science majors in the audience right now, it's like now's where we desperately need your input. But we've talked about this some on the team and amongst a couple of the folks on the Slack channel, but definitely want to get your input as well. So please post comments both in the Slack channel and also if you want to send notes to pbickford@humancomputing.com. I would very much appreciate that. Let me go ahead and pull that one up. I believe this should show up if I do it like that. That is my address right there, pbickford@human-computing.com. If you ever need to get a hold of me directly, that is the way to do it. And like I say, would love to get your input on the topic of the day. But anyway, before we get into that, just want to say hi to everyone who's in the chat already. And let me go ahead and mute down the parts of my windows that are just distracting the devil out of me right now, because there's way too many pictures of stuff going on. Wow, you guys have already started the conversation without me. Anyway, great to see everyone. Hey, Aro, Walt Grogan, great to see you. Greg, Andre, of course. We've been chatting all day. Andre is going to be... He's either going to absolutely blow the doors off of the magazine counts with his work here, or he's going to drive me to be gray-haired by morning. But anyway, he's done an enormous amount of work. But yeah, we'll get into that one as well. Zandu, great to see everyone, and wow, and oh hey, we got our spammer from Russia again. So sweet. Let me go ahead and just take a moment there to block that. It's like you can tell you're really making it in the world when like you're getting the spammer showing up in the chat right away. So that would be Punt, and that would be unwanted commercial content or spam. By the way, if Greg or any of you guys else want to take on the role of a admin or a wrench on these streams, reach out to me, because I think we're almost getting to the point now where we've brought up the level of unprofessionalism such that I would love to have an actual hand keeping things down to a low roar in terms of the chaos level of these streams. Alright, so first of all, just some basic news. And like I say, this is, if you only want to watch a couple minutes live stream, this is probably the couple minutes you want to watch. We just wrapped up several weeks of server updates and maintenance, and we're now actually, all the ComicBase and Atomic Avenue servers are all running on brand new hardware, brand new everything, and it seems like it's going pretty dang smoothly. We managed the final switch over with only an hour and a half of downtime in the middle of the night about 4 or 5 days ago, and virtually no one even noticed that we did it. So that was good. Given how many things we had to change to make that all happen, I'm kind of astounded. We even have a new mail server. Oh, awesome! And excuse me, just a moment. Yep. Hey guys, like I said, the chaos. That one, no one could help me out on, because the office I'm in right now, just because heat rises, I'm on the second floor, tends to be hotter than everywhere else in the place, and so I had the window open because it's nice and like 35 degrees outside. So and unfortunately this is the time when the Amazon delivery truck next door decided to reverse up. So anyway, that's the window's now closed, so I will be broiling before long, but at the very least we will not have that many sonic disruptions. But anyway, back to the servers. We did finally manage to get everything switched over. All your data, all your accounts, everything is good to go. We didn't lose even a second worth of database content in the move, so yay. And that's a real load off us. The new servers quite a bit faster on every metric there is to measure servers on, and hopefully the whole system scales much nicer. The one last piece of infrastructure that we've got left to do is we're going to be upgrading our firewall, which we talked about a little bit about last time, which should give us about twice the throughput on the networking side. So I'm looking forward to that, but that's another thing we got to do in the middle of the night when the system load is at a minimum. Should be pretty straightforward as these, as far as these things go, but you never know till you know. But anyway, I'm happy. Thank you to everyone who helped out on all on the team for making that happen. Thank you for all the third parties we had to reach out for assistance and technical support in playing this whole thing. I swear to God, we've been at this whole ComicBase thing for almost 30 years now, and the infrastructure just gets more and more complicated as we go. But now we not only have better gear running the whole thing, but we also have hot spares ready to roll. So in addition to backups and things like that, if our mainline hardware fails, we actually have synchronized servers ready to spin up on a moment's notice and just handle just about any bad thing we can imagine happening to them. But the world will devise new bad things, so we're at least ready for the threats we do know about. Anyway, that's about it on the news side of things. We have been delayed in putting out the 22.0.1 build of ComicBase. Couple reasons for this. One is we have been very, very busy with infrastructure, updates on the whole thing, just getting that going. It's occupied a lot of our time. Second of all, we are just a hair shy of a couple of metrics we want to hit in terms of content and covers, and we want to give a shot at getting those out there. And just generally, it just takes a really, really long time to stage new, picture discs and things like that, because we have to leave various computers doing nothing but grinding picture compressions for days on end in order to find out how to fit things onto the discs. We're looking at this point about 800,000 covers in the next edition of ComicBase, not just the edition, but the next update to ComicBase. So it takes a while to get that done, and we're looking forward to it. Anyway, that's about it for the news things, and now on to I'm going to do a quick check of the chat and see if any people have other questions. Which, by the way, if you do have questions during the live stream, just please post them to the chat and preface them with @ComicBaseTV. That way they get highlighted in a way that makes it so they're easier for me to see, and we'll take it from there, and we'll get on to the other topic. All right, so let me do a quick scan. All right, so already a couple ideas from Oro, and Walt has a very complicated magazine issue numbering thing. We will get into that one as well. Let's see here. Hey, and oh yes, Oro points out cold Minneapolis. Yes, as someone who lived in Cottage Grove, Minnesota for many years, this is about 35 miles down the road. I think Highway 61 from Minneapolis. Yeah, I do not miss Minneapolis or those environs in January and February at all. It's a beautiful town, beautiful state, a lot of wonderful people, but dang, it's cold out there in the winter. All right. Hey, Andre says, was it beer delivery? Well, if it was, no one pinged my phone about it. All right. So let's see. And Greg wants to talk re-admin stuff. Okay. Greg says, will the new servers result in more reliable performance for uploading inventory to AA? There have been performance issues with that for the last few weeks. Been a topic. Yeah, likely. Likely, if you've had trouble with seeing your inventory posted on Atomic Avenue, likely it was us delaying certain things. In order to swap servers in and out or fire up different processes. So when you connect to our servers, typically if you're sending, like, say, a sales file, you want to update your inventory, it broadcasts up your sales file into a big text file into a holding area, and then there's a process that runs upon it. Well, depending on what other things we're in the middle of switching over, we might have had turned off that process for a while. But everything should be up and running at this point, and if you have problems going forward, let us know. One nice thing I also saw is that once the process is running, it's taking like at least 30% less time to get through its loads than the old servers, and again, with much less hardware foo that we're dealing with on the back end here. So hopefully it should be much more straightforward. Let's see here. Can limit the weekly. I want to pick the system for a new entry. How would one pick the system for a new entry? Yeah, we're talking about the indexing schemes. We will get into all that in great detail in just a moment. Hey Tim, Hale, welcome to join us. And let's see here. All right. And Andrea's question about, is the firewall PF Sense? No, it's hardware firewalls, but for security reasons, I'm not going to get into any of the technical details on anything we do on things, because there's just too much foo in my life, and I don't want to give any hints to anyone who's trying to add more foo to any of our networking lives. Okay, so let's get into it. So. And the nice thing is, because I don't need to stare at a screen at least for a couple of minutes, I can take my glasses off. All right, so we have, since we started doing ComicBase, we have to deal with a couple of issues of how to group titles and how to classify different issues that have not been straightforward from the word go. So let's take an easy example of one. Let's say you have The Amazing Spider-Man, and it ran 500-600 issues, but at some point someone over at Marvel had the bright idea of, hey, let's collect certain storylines from Amazing Spider-Man and we'll put them into a graphic novel, because all we got to do is print the same pages we printed before, bind them into a book, and we'll sell them as one of these highfalutin graphic novel thingies. And let's say you call it Amazing Spider-Man Death of Kraven. Well, first thing we had a question of when we first started doing ComicBase is, well, okay, what is that? I mean, it's a graphic novel. It collects Amazing Spider-Man number, was it 293 through whatever, whatever the Death of Kraven issues were, 7 issues of it at random, and it, of course, sold, and so it'll be followed in quick succession by, Spider-Man: The Coming of Carnage, Spider-Man, Venom Attacks, whatever the things are, which were really just reprints of different cycles inside of the Amazing Spider-Man. Now, at some point, Marvel might have figured out that, hey, these things are selling, and we now have a bunch of them, so maybe we'll start sticking numbers on the back covers of them. So now it's, it's the 7th Amazing Spider-Man graphic novel, and it collects these issues. It's the 8th one, it collects these ones. But a bunch of them will have come out with just their own names, and so forth. What do we do, right? And the decision was made early on in ComicBase, and this was partially shaped by the idea that in the early days especially, making a new title was somewhat expensive for us. We would actually, hire writers to go out and, we'd get a hold of the actual title. We'd, get a copy of at least one issue of it. We'd scan it. We'd, send it out to a writer. We'd have to edit the writer's work in terms of describing what the title was, and so it was cheaper for us certainly to say, Amazing Spider-Man Death of Kraven, if we simply say instead of calling it a new title on its own, of putting that as book 1 or book 3 or whatever it was under the Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, that was, I'll confess, that was certainly part of our thinking. But the other one is back in 1992 when we started, graphic novels were just getting to be a thing, and it was clear that they were going to keep on exploding, and we didn't want to take every graphic novel that was just a collection of reprints from an existing book and treat it as if it was their own thing. Plus, what if you just called the graphic novel, if it collected issues 1 through 5 of Wildcats, and you just called it Wildcats, Book 1, you want it to be filed under Wildcats, not as Wildcats Book 1 as its own title. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense. But we always had a problem. I mean, the trade-off on that one was, if I'm sitting there and I'm holding in my hand a graphic novel which says Spider-Man: The Death of Kraven, there wasn't a really obvious way for a neophyte to figure out that this was book 3 or whatever else under the Amazing Spider-Man. So, I mean, there was definitely a downside to this approach. Now, with the dawn of barcodes and things like that, things got a little better. You could always find it by the barcode, and it would tell you what crazy thing we put it under. And as graphic novels got to be more pronounced, more common, then it became more and more common to do things like numbering them on the back. So for instance, with Hellblazer, the very first Hellblazer collected graphic novel was Hellblazer Original Sins, and then that went through a couple printings before DC figured out, wow, these things are really selling, and they continue to selling, and they're into the 6th printings on some of the first ones. And so now every time we put out another collection of Hellblazer stuff, we're going to stick a number on the back of it, and we're going to call it, book 7, book 12, whatever the thing is of Hellblazer. So they formed a series kind of after the fact, but for a couple decades now, it's been a series of the graphic collections. So, our early call of, calling, Hellblazer Book 1 Original Sins seems like a really good idea in retrospect, because now that does actually say 1 on the back of the covers, and the next ones say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. That's great, but again, we have the cross-referencing issue. On another end of things, let's take our favoritist comic in the entire planet. And now I'm going to put my glass on to flip over the screens here. And let's talk about four-color comics. When people would call us and say, "Hey, where is Annie Oakley and Tag in the database?" I'm typing Annie Oakley and Tag. Oh, I chose a great example. I'm holding one that says issue number 575, but, if I actually go to the Annie Oakley in Tag series, it only has issues 1 through 26 or something. What the heck is going on with that? Or for that matter, let's say Francis the Talking Mule. Right? There is no Francis the Talking Mule, but I'm clearly holding a comic in my hands, which says Francis the Talking Mule, issue number 579. What the heck is going on there? Do you comic-based people suck as hard as I think you do? And the answer is no. This is one of those things that just comic collectors just get used to after a while, is that once upon a time, starting in 1941, running for a couple of decades, Dell put out a series that ran, I believe they published, several times a month. It might have been several times a week even sometimes, which acted as a spotlight for whatever properties they had laying around that they could, feature. And so what they would do in this particular case is, and hey, let me see if I can do something kind of clever here. Give me just a second. I was playing around with this one. Don't know if it'll work, but let's give it a shot. So if I go to menu and I go to, where did Super Source go? There's Super Source. And I go to cut over. All right, it's not wonderful, but we'll take it for now. Anyway, I think there's actually, here, I've put a lot of time into playing with the switcher here, and I'm going to see if I can get this to work a little bit better. So if I go change my inputs, number 1, and I bump me down. There we go. That'll work. Okay. Back up to Super Source, out, and let's cut over. And nope, that did not work even slightly. All right, well, it was worth a shot. We'll master this and we'll get back to y'all. All right, so let's get back to it. All right, that's back to me. And now let's see if we can get the, wow, that's really cool. I absolutely lost the feed from my camera. Whoa, it is bouncing all over the place now. I don't know if that's the HDMI or what it is. All right, but let's see if we can put this back and let's get the show back on the road. All right, I see it on the monitor. Let's switch over to it. Boom, there we are. Okay. So going back to, let's go to our friend Francis the Talking Mule. So, Overstreet Price Guide spent a lot of his time trying to educate the world in the idea that, you just had to get used to the idea that there was going to be, put myself in the bottom right-hand corner. Slightly better. Yeah. Upper right. All right, there we go. You just had to get used to the idea that there was the series that came out that ran 1,000-some issues, and if you couldn't find a title listed someplace else, look for it under this legendary title that you just had to know existed. This is a worst-case scenario, I think. A slightly better case scenario is when you say something like, something where they actually had branding. So if we go to Classics Illustrated, Classics Illustrated. You guys have all seen this one, which I believe is Gilberton. So a novice collector might be looking at something that says, the Three Musketeers, and so you might be looking under Musketeer or Three, or the Count of Monte Cristo. So you might type in Count of Monte Cristo. Now at some point you might figure out that, well, there's also this branding in the upper left hand corner, which says Classics Illustrated. Maybe I should look there, right? But it's not optimal. I mean, it relies on having some comic knowledge. It relies on having kind of second guessing how everyone else is going to classify things and so forth. And so it's just not great for for figuring out what the heck we're going with as far as how to find stuff. If we were running like a self-respecting store that actually was friendly to the customer and let people find things most easily, you'd love to have a way to type in Count of Monte Cristo or Monte Cristo and have it actually appear as an option, right? I mean, how would Amazon do it? I mean, if you had all the money in the world and all the resources in the world, that's certainly how you would do it. We are but a small software shop trying to cope with the world's comics, but that's certainly, it would be an improvement if there was a way to find things under either one. So if I were to type Death of Craven or Carnage, The Revenge of Carnage or something like that, that it would automatically offer Amazing Spider-Man volume number 27 as one of the hits. That would be an improvement if we could do such a thing. And the same thing goes for if I could type in Francis the Talking Mule, if it could offer 4-Color Comics 590 second series number 597 as one of the options, that would be a good thing. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, we have another problem, which is, let's say you've got something where it is a title. Everyone knows it's a title. And you still want to be able to tie it into something larger. So let's say, for instance, Echo Burning is one of the Jack Reacher books by Lee Child, or for that matter, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Right now, when J.K. Rowling, let me go back to the start. When J.K. Rowling, just getting, I believe still on welfare at the time, bouncing, her baby in her lap as she writes the book, writes Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone over in England, or Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I believe it's called in America. She had hoped the thing would sell, right? As it turns out, it sold like nothing else except the Bible. But when you first write the book, you don't know, right? I mean, you might think, hey, if it sells, I got more stories to tell, and if it craters, I'll never get a chance to tell them. But this one did sell, so she wrote another one. It was Prisoner of Azkaban, and then she wrote another one. And at a certain point, she was selling so many books that she could have done a George Lucas and said, I have an idea for 7 or 9 or 28 books, and they would have been like, great, we'll start soliciting them right now. But not everyone can do that one. Usually, when you write a series of books, you got the first one in you, and you hope that they give you enough room to do the rest. Now, there are exceptions to this one. Sometimes you're writing a trilogy, and you deliberately piss off all the fans of the first book by writing something that ends on a cliffhanger, because you have that much confidence that you're going to put them out one way or another. But a lot of times you don't. So we get to the situation now where we have something like Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban, feels like it should be definitely listed as book 2 of Harry Potter, because if I'm going to read it and make sense of the story, I got to start at Philosopher's Stone, and then I got to go all the way through, because even though each chapter might be enjoyable, and each chapter is apparently 600-700 pages long, it really makes more sense to read the whole thing as one ginormous saga. Similarly, if you liked the Jack Reacher books, so if you just happened to go past an airport, bookshop, you picked up Lee Child's Echo Burning. They said, it features a character called Jack Reacher, which I hear has been in a bunch of other books. At which point, you might want to say, well, okay, where does this one fit into his overall story, and what other books could I read? And it'd be nice to figure out that this, is like the 11th Jack Reacher book. They were never numbered or put anything like that on them, but it'd be nice to be able to tie them in to say, well, what other Jack Reacher books have you got? And to be able to answer that question. So we've got 2 problems going on here. One is starting from the specific, starting from issue 457 of 4-Color Comics, a series that has numbers on it and everything. It's, at least the people who organize comics for a living know it's a series, right? There's no way we could issue Francis the Talking Mule as anything other than 4-Color Comics second series number 457. It's the only thing that makes any kind of sense for us library sciencey type folks. At the same time, it doesn't make any sense to a novice, right? Because they're looking for a title, and it's not in the title. At best case, it's listed under the notes, sometimes under the storyline. And at the same time, so that's going from the specific to the general. Sometimes you also would like to, the general to the specific. Sometimes you'd also like to go from the specific to the general, like with the Harry Potter ones. If you just happen to read In the Half-Blood Prince, and you say, hey, I really like this one. What other Harry Potter books have you got, and what order do they follow into? You'd like to be able to intuit the series from this series that at the time when we had to index the books, when as people were writing the books, they maybe didn't even know it was going to be a series because they didn't know how popular it would be. So we had to index the things as they came out as if they were their own titles. So you want to have the way to tie them into an Uber title after the fact. And one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to double entry all this stuff. That way lies hell. So in other words, we don't want to have a Francis the Talking Mule title which is an exact duplicate or hyperlink to Four Color Comics number 457, because all we're asking at that point is to get into data weirdnesses and we're best cases we're bumping up the size of your database by crazy amounts. Worst cases we'd get into a situation where due to whatever fluke of the way things are indexed or looked up or whatever else, you could even see a different price arrive for one versus the other, which would just be insanity because they are the same thing. So we don't want that. So what do we do? Well, we had an idea, and I hope this makes some kind of sense. And honestly, I'd also like to know your ideas as well. We had the idea of doing two things, and we originally said, well, maybe we'll do one, and the more we think about it, we're thinking, actually, we should do both. And it goes like this. So to solve problem number one, which is I'm at a particular thing that has, I'm in a series, I'm at a particular item in the series, but that item itself has its own identity, which people will know outside of the series. So, Four Color Comics second series number 457, anyone else is looking at that and saying, that's Francis the Talking Mule, right? You'd like to be able to say, on the item level, for both books and magazines and anything else, you'd like to be able to say that, Four Color Comics number 457 has an item name. It doesn't just have an item number, but it has an item title, something like that. But it has its own identity in this particular case, and you want to be able to say what that title is, and more importantly, you want to be able to search for it automatically. So as I'm looking for, I'm just typing in the autocomplete in ComicBase, and I start typing Francis the Talking Mule. As soon as I start typing that, it's searching all the titles that go like that, but then it's also searching any items that happen to have an item title of Francis the Taw, etc. At which point, it could offer me one of two sets of results, right? It could say, well, I got in this case, I don't have a Francis the Talking Mule title, but I do have an item called, or a series of items called Francis the Talking Mule, in which case you'd say Francis the Talking Mule in Four Color Comics, and just offer that as a supplementary search result. Much the same way that, like, say I was looking for, I'm typing on Amazon and I'm typing for something like, helmet, right? If I just type helmet on Amazon, I might find replica war helmets, I might find construction helmets, and I might find a metal band called Helmet from the 1990s. So it kind of says parenthesis, did you want it in music or did you want it in home and garden? And so you could kind of dial in what you're doing. Because we're dealing with periodicals and books and things like that, I think we could say that we know that what we're doing here is we're either telling you about a title or we're telling you about an item in a series, at which point we would just automatically, if you typed Francis the Talking Mule and there was a title called that, we would go and do what we normally do, is we'd pull up all the title results that match that. But if we said Francis the Talking Mule parenthesis in Four Color Comics, second series, which granted could get a little long. I'm not saying this is without things that we need to finesse. At that point, we would go to Four Color Comics directly to that issue, and we'd pull up that one. But we'd get you where you wanted to go by either path. Same thing would go is if you typed in Death of Kraven, at some point, Marvel actually, I believe on some of these, actually went and reprinted in a separate edition, throwing in other content and things that made us index it as its own title, Death of Kraven, as well as the storyline Death of Kraven, in different things. But it might exist as both a title and as a as a item. So we would return both sets of things, and depending on which one you chose, we would take you to the appropriate search automatically. So that's our idea for the first part. On the second part, when you have something like, I started at an individual title, right? But I need to be able to say later on that this actually was part of a bigger thing. So I'm indexing my Jack Reacher books, and I type in Echo Burning, and so I go to the title Echo Burning, and I see it exists in a hardcover and a softcover and multiple printings and whatever the things are. But I also would see a listing in that title right up at the top, which says, by the way, this is book 7 or book 11 of the Jack Reacher books. And if I click on Jack Reacher books, it does a search for other books which had that listed. Now the mechanics of how we would make that all work is we would add a overall title or overall series and a overall series sequence number. We'd add 2 new fields on the title level to any of these titles. So the default would be that a given title does not have an overall series. So if I'm just going to the latest, let me pull up a random one here. If I'm just going to the latest issue of, what starts with ROG, Rogan Dash, right? If I just go to Rogan Dash, it has no overall title, right? So Rogan Dash finds me Rogan Dash, end of story, right? But if I were to go to, let's go into the title detail of Rogan Dash here. Not that it has one here to show you, but I would show you what level this information would live at. Is we would add a couple of new fields to any given title in the database, and we'd say something like, okay, so the title is Rogan Dash, but the overall series is the Mutant Chronicles #7, whatever the overall thing was, if it belonged to an overall concept or series. At which point, if I'd put in that there's an overall title that Rogan Dash belongs to, and if I knew the sequence it belonged to, then I could feature that information right at the top when I go to Rogan Dash, and it would say, Rogan Dash, by the way, this is book 7 of the Mutant Chronicles, or the Afterworld Apocalypse series. At which point, if I clicked Afterworld Apocalypse series, I'd show you all the books that were part of the Afterworld's Apocalypse series in order. And then you could go and bounce between those merrily. And so our thought is, if we did that, then we could start from what we've got and give you a way of both drilling up and drilling down and sort out all these kind of overall things. That's the idea. And we think we can make it work. It's going to take some work on our part. The good news is it doesn't break anything we've already got, which is kind of important when you're doing this stuff. Because anything that involves that it doesn't work until you redo the entire universe and try over again, that's never going to get off the ground when we're talking about databases with a million comics and things like that. So it's got to be something that it works with where we're at right now, but it works better once you start adding in all this overall information as we go. And if we do it, we also obviously we need to put out a version which adds these fields automatically to your existing databases. They'd be blank to start with, which would be the right default for 99% of the things. I mean, most things just exist on their own. They aren't part of a greater whole, and they don't exist as their own identity within a greater series. But we're thinking, like I say, on the item level, we would add something. I don't know, we're not sure of the name yet. Something like item title, or something like that. That would be added to on the item level to both books, comic, both. What do you say? You don't say both when you're talking about 3 items, but to books, to comics, and magazines, to all of those. They would all have a new field called item title, which could be filled in, which would allow us to take some of those things, and this really would help on things like 4-color comics, where you'll notice, just as a matter of style, what we do on 4-color comics is, and let's go ahead and pull this up here, is we would put in the notes, that 4-color comics number 4 was Smilin' Jack. Now, Smilin' Jack isn't a storyline; it's just the main character, right? And they'd have a number of Smilin' Jacks as the series went on. Flash Gordon, right? So you'd like to be able to say, hey, let me, I search for Flash Gordon, let me not only find Flash Gordon comics, but let me find Flash Gordon as an ongoing thing within, 4-color comics or anything else that it belonged to. And let us do those kind of searches as we go. Treat them as their own synthetic title as we go. Now, one of the reasons we need to do it as its own field is because we need it to we need those searches to happen as quickly as I type. So if I type Flash Gordon right there, whoops, as badly as I type, you can see that I don't have long to type before I expect to see results. And the problem with searching either the existing notes or the existing storylines for these things is with storylines, there's already over 1 million items that we have as searchable storylines. And I'm not really interested in the storyline Donald Duck, for instance. I'm not looking for, Donald, or like, here, let's choose this one. It's a little clearer. If I'm looking for Flash Gordon comics, right? So I'm holding Flash Gordon number 10 in my hands. At least apparently that's what it looks like I'm holding, right? So if I'm typing Flash Gordon, I don't know necessarily the storyline I'm holding. I'm looking for Flash Gordon number 10. I want to be able to find this book right here. I'm not looking for the Ice Kingdom, which is what storyline was running through this particular issue of 4-Color Comics. But I do want to know that it was the Flash Gordon that was inside 4-Color Comics. It's identified as such, or Wash Tubbs, or Mr. District Attorney, or whatever the actual title of the particular issue was. So that's Wash Tubbs. Here's Bambi's Children, right? So I need to be able to pull those results out as quickly as I can find them. And once again, ironically, this one isn't even a story called Bambi's Children. This is various stories within that featuring Bambi's Children, which was a special edition of 4-Color Comics. So it's got to be its own title, and it's got to be something that gets indexed, very rapidly, that I can pull the results back as fast as you can type them. Otherwise, the whole trick isn't going to work. So that's why you'd want to have its own field inside all the issues, to support that way of going. And then the second way of going is when you had a title like we talked about the overall series number with Rogue and Gosh. If you wanted to just say that this is issue 7 of the Mutant Chronicles or something like that, what we're talking about doing there is we're talking about again having a title set aside that you can very quickly search, which also includes with it a sequence number, so you can order the results in some kind of order. So really with those ones we're talking about adding 2 fields, and once again the idea is as quickly as you can type them, we'd like to bring back the right results and do the right thing when you search for them. And if we do that, then yeah, we would put it out as a patch to your existing comic base. It would add the new fields. Blank is fine as a default, but as people fill new things, they need to come in as part of corrections so that the magic starts working as you start submitting new things like that. And then also we will want to work the interface with Atomic Avenue so that people can find these things and buy them more easily. That's that of course is where half the magic happens anyways. Once you say either, look, I'd really like to find more Jack Reacher books or whatever else, in which case you'd love to be able to type Jack Reacher and get results on Atomic Avenue, or for that matter in ComicBase. And the same thing goes if you want to sell them. So that's our thought. And I've been talking for a long time, so let me see if we can get some comments on that right now. And then we're going to talk about issue numbering, because there's thorny things about that one as well. All right, so Greg says, yeah, there have been some delays in posting Atomic Avenue. Yes, it should be better now. If you have any trouble, please let us know. Oro says, are collected reprints of the new book and anthology. What our stance has been. Whoops, and we've lost the program queue. Why are we not? God, that's weird. All right, so hang on. Let me cut over. Wow. Huh. Yeah, I think I've thoroughly confused our switcher right now. It's, wow. Okay. Oh, I know what's going on. Yeah. Well, actually, what happened is it messed up the key. Yep. That's what you get. That's what you get when you play around with things like that. So you have to trust me on the comments right now, because just in order to keep the video game running properly. Because, well, actually, you don't need to trust me, because I know how to get the chroma back up. There we go. Let's try that now. All right. Boom. All right. So, I'm getting better at this. The problem is I'm not so fluent at the switcher stuff that I can do it as rapidly as I need to right now, but I'm going to keep practicing on it till I am. All right, so let's go with this one. Oro asks, are collected reprints in the new book and anthology? So our stance in the past has been, if everything in a collected book was from the same general series, you would treat it as a book or a deluxe set or whatever else of that series. So once upon a time, a lot of what helps our our thinking when it comes down to how to group things is, would any sane comic shop owner organize this thing under, would you lay down a new comic title divider in order to organize this thing? Which is why, for instance, annuals always get put at the back of the the regular series that they collect. Same thing goes with special editions, or for that matter, collected books. If they only collect from one series. So if book 1 of Sandman Midnight Gallery only collects issues 1 through 5 Sandman Midnight Gallery, it goes at the end of Sandman Midnight Gallery. It doesn't. It's not its own title, and I think that makes sense. But on the other hand, if we had Sandman's Revenge, which collects Sandman Midnight Gallery 1 through 5, as well as Vertigo Visions presents Sandman, as well as the Neil Gaiman sketchbook or something like that, that is going to be listed as its own title, because you can't really say where does it belong otherwise. It really has to be its own thing. I hope that's on point. Okay. Oh, and Walt gives me a better question. All right. So I was indexing issues of Marvel UK's Super Spider-Man and Captain Britain. No indice, you couldn't find it. Went to the web, tried the original title. Its numbering continued from ComicBase. Found it. How I could find it with an extra step. I am not being clever enough to understand your question as quickly as I need to right now. If it gels for me, I will. If not, please forgive me. I hope to have the penny drop on that one again. I'm not sure if I'm sussing where you're going with that one quite as quickly as I should. And Greg says, yes, the Hellblazer book listings are really Byzantine now. Hell yes. Let's see. So Greg said, yeah, alternate title or cover title might be useful. I don't want a cat cover title. Oh my god, that way does lie madness. Because at that point, it's like, what is the cover title for Spectacular Spider-Man? Don't know. It changes 80 times during the run. It's like, or Captain America first series, which sometimes is Captain America and Falcon, and sometimes it's Captain America without Falcon, and sometimes it's whatever. It's like, yeah, I don't want to do cover title. That is one where I'd say, like, if you can read the indice, that's probably a good thing. But maybe we need to look at that later. The problem on adding cover title is cover title needs to apply. If you had the idea of alternate title, you'd be adding it at the title level, which if there were only one alternate title, I guess you could add it and it would make some kind of sense. So it would solve part of the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man problem. But what if there were more than one, and what if it was one title throughout part of it but not the other part of it? What might make a little more sense is one thing that we maybe ought to do is, and I think we can pull this off in the necessary time for searching, is to also search the title comments when you're searching for titles, because there we actually do get to note these kind of labyrinthine title history things. Like, I guess the New York Times was once the New York Daily Times or something like that in its first issues. You're still going to organize it. It clearly forms one title, all 160 years or whatever the hell it was of its issue. It really was one thing, but it might have cycled through a few different cover titles as it went on. I think maybe we can afford to be a little loosey-goosey as far as returning soft matches from the comments. Yeah, that might be the answer there. I'm morphing my answer as we go, after the initial shock of the idea gets over me. All right, let's see here. Yeah, Greg says, hey, yes. Moral of the story, no comic book publisher ever sat down and said, how can we title a number of comics so they're easy to catalog in ComicBase? Or anything else. No, it's funny because once upon a time, and I've said this a lot tonight, Marvel used to be really good. Like, they would have Strange Tales Volume 1. When they went back to press and and they had a new concept for it years later, they called it Strange Tales Volume 3, Volume 2. Then, later on, Strange Tales Volume 3. And then they did again, and they called it Strange Tales Volume 1. This just makes you nuts, and so, yeah, it's always we always have to act as like an interpretive layer between these things, but at the same time, as much as is humanly possible without cross-wiring the entire comic world in terms of, indexing things, we do want to make it so a naive person could type in what they've got in front of them and get an answer that makes some kind of sense. Man, having to learn about a mythical title called Four Color Comics, which I'm pretty sure through most of its run never actually said Four Color Comics anywhere inside it. I believe at some point they did, but it's almost like a legend rather than an actual title. there's a Dell movie comic like that where I'm pretty sure it was created by Bob Overstreet, just as a way of grouping, at least in the Overstreet price guide, all the different Dell movie specials. But I mean, I don't believe if you actually looked at the whole thing, other than maybe some incidental trade dress that it ever had in the indicia or anything like it, anything that says like Dell Movie Giants or something. I'm probably getting the exact title wrong, but I do remember there was one in the Overstreet guys like, dude, I've looked at a lot of the issues of this one, and I see nothing which says the way you've grouped it. And at the same time, I understand why Bob did it that way, because you had to do something to put these together. But at the same time, you didn't want to spin out every single thing as its own title. But at the same time, it was like, yeah, you want to start from something they're staring at and work out from that. Okay, let's see. Yes, and Greg points out, he says, you already have some duplicate entries for some DC's 100 pages under different titles. It is possible. If so, please call us out with price checks on those, because, yeah, we would like to have things listed one way and one way only in the database. We don't want them listed, we don't want two different entries in the database or, referring to the same book. I don't mind finding it from two different directions, but I want to find the exact same record in the database. Let's see here. Storylines and reading order from Tim Kilbreath. That one's not so bad, as long as, and that's when we're counting on you to maintain our style. We're a little bit Nazi about it, but it will do it automatically. So, for instance, if you say, what's Nightfall, right? The 42-part story of Bane showing up and breaking Batman's back and swapping out Batman and doing things like that. If you went through all the different parts of Nightfall, when you look at the storyline field, you'll see that they're all listed as Nightfall, comma, space, part, space, a number, right? That comma, part, space, a number automatically gets used, and that's how the stuff gets indexed. So the overall storyline is Nightfall. It's not Nightfall Part 3. It's Nightfall, but we'll automatically find, and we can organize all the parts based on that reading order. So as long as you stick to style in terms of the editorial on that one, then everything is good. We didn't want to have a separate field for the reading order on that one, but realistically, when you're talking about because when we're going to go back, especially some of these things are just wildly after the fact. The thing about things like the Jack Reacher books, it's hard for me to imagine that people submitting the data are going to stick to any style. If you say something like, Echo Burning is, the 11th Jack Reacher book. I mean, somebody's going to want to say, if I gave you a field called overall series and sequence or something like that, somebody would write in Jack Reacher book, Jack Reacher books, part 11. Somebody else would say 11th appearance of Jack Reacher. Somebody else would, it would be all over the map. No one would ever, coalesce on anything way of putting it in particular. I think we got a chance of getting people to coalesce on the overall series, especially if we can autocomplete on it. So we can offer as a pop-up as you're typing. If you start typing that it offers Jack Reacher as the overall thing. And then if we're asking for specifically a number, I think we got a chance of actually getting you to give us an actual number and put it in order. Whereas I think if we leave it too loosey-goosey, I think I just don't see it coming together. All right, Jess says, couldn't tags handle some of that series, for instance? They could help, but I feel like we need to do more. So the problem with tags is that they're really good for rando stuff. So, I mean, you could tag a series with any darn thing you want. You could tag it according to its genre. You could tag it according to what box you've kept it in. You could tag it according to, I like this, I want to sell this, whatever else. And all these things become executable searches, but there's no built-in talk about what a given tag means. And I think as soon as you start to get into common words and things like that, I think we start using tags as our sort criteria, I think it's just going to end in disaster. This does feel like something that we need to dedicate a field to, but let's think about it. I mean, it's a good point. Let's see here. Oh, awesome. Points out the publication order, this is Greg, says, the publication order in the chronological order of the original Conan stories by Robert E. Howard not the same. The chronological order is actually a matter of debate. Yeah, I've seen that as well. And for my newest passion, the Eagle Moss graphic novels, Legend of Batman, that's kind of crazy making as well. Is that they will actually have as a note. Let me go and pull these up here, so maybe I can show you what we're talking about. Legend of the Batman. No, Legend of Batman. DC Comics Legend of Batman. So these are those Eagle Moss graphic novels where it starts out well enough. Issue number 1 is number 1. It's the earliest thing. Number 2 is number 2. I think by the time you get to 3 or 4, the chronological order... Yeah, no, by the time you get to number 3, the chronological order of what goes... this is about Born to Kill, which reprints Batman and Robin number 1 through 8. Its chronological order was number 57. And why do you care? Well, the answer is because the graphic they put along the spines of these books. So if you lay them all out on your bookshelf, the order of that picture is in chronological order. It's not in series order. So they'll label it volume 3. But if you arrange them 1, 2, 3, you get a mishmash on your shelf. It doesn't make any sense. Whereas if you happen to have 100 or so of these books, and you put them in the chronological order, they form this amazing tableau of Batman fighting Joker and Scarecrow and everybody else. But yeah, that's a separate deal. If there was more than like 2 titles on the planet that had the chronological order where it was important, and it was important to be able to sort and keep them in order that way, I would probably dedicate some extra field for that one. But yeah, I know the Robert E. Howard ones, the order of the books, in fact, the order of the comic books does not follow the order of either the release or the order of the character's story through time, because there are certain major milestones in Conan's life. He's a barbarian. He comes out of the wastes of Samaria. Eventually he marries his queen and becomes, kills a king and becomes, a ruler of a big kingdom. Right? There's certain big milestones along that path. He's a pirate for a while. Where you want to be able to say, this is a story that takes place before this, but after that. And so it'd be nice to kind of keep that chronology going. But, yeah, I don't know if there's 80 different ways I can cut this particular problem. Yeah, I mean, that's something that feels like that is something you could search along notes for, but I'll probably handle these, the specialized chronologies or the specialized orders as a second order issue on this one. At this point, if you could find the Conan books to start with, that'd be good. But if you found, like, for instance, was it Conan and the Wrath of Thulsa Doom, right? You'd love to be able to type Thulsa Doom and find that the book at least exists. Regardless of what order it is in the overall run of Conan books. Alright, so let's see here. Let's see, dig some more talk about tags, good points. And the issues want being found under Spider-Man Comics Weekly. Jeez. Yeah, Walt, tell me this. If you were looking at the indicia on these ones, would it have told you what you were looking at? Because in which case that could be one of these issues of where the cover title is wildly different than the real title. Another one that comes to mind on that one is Marvel Comics Presents. So Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine, or when you get to like 21, it's like Cyclops. Cyclops of X Factor, and for a while there was Weapon X, right? This is not Wolverine number 41. This is no version of Wolverine number 41. It's Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine, and these were fun too because they didn't have just one, but it was a flip book, so they had one on the front and one on the back. So good Lord knows what the cover title on this sucker would be. Some of the stuff like. I don't know a way of completely conquering the idea of if it's got indicia, look at the indicia, but it would be nice, to the extent it's possible, of letting people, type in Weapon X and find, the appropriate issues, if that was a thing. All right, let me see what else we got. And Greg points out, my suggestion of cover title field was for the item level, not the title level. Yeah, I yeah, I don't know, man. It's for the problem you're solving. I think the problem we're solving is like the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man problem. If you called it cover title, and first of all, it's going to be redundant throughout most titles for most everything, right? So most Fantastic Four comics are called Fantastic Four, right? So it's almost like title versus album title in iTunes, right? So I mean, it doesn't, for 99% of the books out there, you're not buying anything on that part. I guess I'd love to handle it as an exception case kind of thing, where you say, if you had the idea that the particular item had a title, which might be the same as cover title, so maybe we're closer than we think, or maybe, than it sounds like. But if you had the idea that, for instance, the item title for Francis the for Four Color Comics 457 was Francis the Talking Mule, and you would fill it in or not fill it in. If you didn't fill it in, then it's Four Color Comics 457. That's the only way you're ever going to find it. But if you filled in that its item title was Francis the Talking Mule, then it kind of gives you two ways of finding that one. So maybe we're kind of talking about the same thing from two different levels. I'm not sure. I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess, is the cover title the same as the item title? Maybe it is. Maybe cover title is even a better name for it. I'm kind of coming around to this one. Let me think on that some. Yeah. Oro says, will quantum computing solve all this for us? Who knows? All right, and Walt says there was no title or issue information in the indicia. Man, now you're gonna make me really curious about those particular issues. Walt, if you get a chance, shoot me a note, and I'll go ahead and put my date up on the screen one more time. Please shoot me a note with the cover and the indicia on those particular ones here, because now I'm kind of wondering, did we put those in the right place ourselves? But that's me. Yeah, if you can, shoot me a cover picture and a picture of the indicia on those particular ones, because I'm curious as to what we did on that one. I know a lot about comics, but I don't know everything, and some of these things are rando judgment calls, and some of them I'm totally open to the idea we got wrong. So yeah, let's see. Anyway, that's, I think, about as much as I can talk right now. So let me take another quick scan of the chat, but after that, I think, please, if you're interested in this discussion, please follow up with me, and I'll point that up one more time, P. Bickford at human-computing.com. There's the magic thing again. Send me your thoughts on this one. And also, if you're interested in being part of the development group on any of these things, we do have a Slack group where we give you kind of like, inside the wire discussion of things that we have planned. I'm thinking if we take this one on, and because I'm kind of interested in this one, I'll be honest, it's a bit self-serving. I submitted a book myself over the weekend. I'd gotten a Christmas gift of Rush, the band Rush, and Philosophy, which, if you open it up, is volume 57 of Philosophy and Pop Culture, which you know that because if you opened up the inside of the book, it actually says Philosophy and Pop Culture number 57, and it's got a little checklist of, I guess, number 1 was Seinfeld and Philosophy. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, there's a little bit of trade dress, so, at least a little bit, that indicates that, yeah, you'd know this belongs to a larger series. It feels like you got to index as part of a larger series, because these 57 books certainly formed a series, and they're listed as such by the publisher. So, I mean, we got to index them that way. At the same time, I also got to think any normal human being looking for this thing would never find it if they didn't type Rush and Phila. And if there were no hits that came back by that point, they would just give up and assume we didn't have it. And that's not a great outcome, right? We want to make it so it's findable in both ways. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, could we find it by searching notes as well? Except that notes is a free text field. Anything could be in there in any order. And we could never index the notes field in a way that allows us to autocomplete. And secondarily, if you sat there with storylines, which we do have indexed, ahead of time, the problem is there's way too many storylines. I mean, there's literally a million or more storylines in ComicBase right now. So we can't necessarily serve up the results as fast as we want to. Like, there's only 60,000 titles in ComicBase. There's almost 1 million comic issues, but only 60,000 titles. So you want something that doesn't have those kind of numbers behind it in order to be able to autocomplete as fast as you go. And then the secondary problem is the storylines inside, the equivalent of storyline for a book would be like articles or storylines or else. And this was a collection of articles. So the storyline, there was not a storyline called Russian philosophy. The storylines were called things like, they were all the names of Rush songs used as, points about, Ayn Rand or whatever else. I mean, honestly, it wasn't a great book. So, I mean, it was long on air drumming and talking about sneaking out and attending concerts and, living in mom's basement. It was long on that sort of thing and very short on any kind of critical analysis of anything. So, anyway, just if you're a Rush fan and you also like philosophy, I'm gonna suggest maybe look elsewhere for your enlightenment. But in terms of like, if you wanted this book, or in this case, if I want to sell you this book, I'd like you to be able to type Rush and then start getting results. So so it strikes me as a good problem to take on. If we take this on, I think we got to start thinking about how to lay the groundwork on this one sooner rather than later, because it's going to be one of those things where we do the heavy plumbing on the whole thing to make it possible to track this data, but then the whole thing that makes it all work is when all you folks start submitting data or start gathering things into series that we didn't know were series or whatever else. I mean, it's a long, slow process. I mean, we've been doing this ComicBase thing for 30 years now. We say it's the biggest database of comic books on the planet. We're not joking. It's and it takes forever to to do these larger changes. But yeah, it's funny because even people like Amazon don't do a great job. I mean, like, I'm a big Lee Child fan. You can find all the books Lee Child ever wrote, maybe because he mostly only writes Jack Reacher stuff. That's not a bad way of finding all the Jack Reacher books. But if you find, if you type Jack Reacher into Amazon, it's pretty sporadic as far as what you get back. It's kind of relying on these random free text notes that various publishers or other people like that have put in to kind of piece it together, and it's not presented in any kind of order. If you're trying to read the stuff in any kind of semblance of chronological order, you'll go crazy, because there's enough of them that it's hard to kind of do. It isn't like there's just 5 books. It's not like Song of Ice and Fire. Or for that matter, Harry Potter. But at the same time, it's a little crazy just trying to make sense of the whole thing. And so I feel like even Amazon is as great as they are on this thing, even they could be doing better on it. But yeah, I'd like to take it on. So if you're interested in it, drop me a note and let us know if you want to be part of the early discussion on this, or join kind of like the back and forth, particularly in the Slack group. Because I think what we'll probably do is we'll probably try it out in some internal builds, and see how it feels, and then see what a headache it is. If it feels like it's working at all, we'll probably see, well, how much of a headache is it going to be to take this information all the way through the whole process? And the whole process being that you can put it in your own database, you can submit it as a correction to us, that we can take the whole thing, update Atomic Avenue with the results on that one, that we can update the results on Atomic Avenue when you search there, that we can, retool the mobile app so that it also allows this kind of magical searching, that that the magical searching on Atomic Avenue also works that way, and that we can then take that and push it out as a content update to everybody else, and if they're running the right magical version of ComicBase, that it updates your listings. It's a bit of a trip, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong, so we need some time to get it all right. So if you're interested, let us know, and I can add you to the Slack group. And also, just if you just want to share your thoughts, let me know, and I'd love to hear them. Because like I say, some of these things are like my initial take on the idea is like, I don't know, that sounds terrible. But then the more I talk about it, it's like, oh, actually, maybe it's not. So anyway, thanks again, guys. Appreciate it as always, and next time we'll probably tunnel less on one topic and move into other things. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.